The massive holographic display flickered to life in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, showing red warning symbols spreading across star maps like a disease. Admiral Kim Juno stood perfectly still among the human delegation, his dark eyes fixed on the terrifying display. Each red dot represented another star system consumed by the ancient machines they called DEVOURERS. The chamber itself was a marvel of alien architecture, with crystalline walls that seemed to bend light in impossible ways. Representatives from dozens of species sat in floating pods arranged in perfect circles around the central hologram. The air hummed with translation devices converting hundreds of different languages into comprehensible speech. High Chancellor Mortha, a being that looked like living crystal with too many arms, gestured toward the display with what might have been urgency. His voice echoed through the chamber with the authority of 3 million years of galactic civilization. "The situation is clear," he announced. "The Devourer swarm has breached the outer defensive perimeter. All member species must implement Protocol 7 immediately." Captain Lee Hanna, standing beside Juno, felt her stomach drop. She had read about Protocol 7 in the classified briefings. It was the Confederation's ultimate survival strategy, complete withdrawal from threatened territories. "What exactly does Protocol 7 require?" asked Ambassador Parkman, the senior human diplomat. The Chancellor's crystalline form shifted slightly, refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. "All colonies beyond the inner defensive line will be evacuated immediately. Military forces will withdraw to designated safe zones. The outer rim territories will be ... abandoned." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Juno's hands clenched behind his back. He thought of the human colonies scattered across those doomed systems' new Sol with its 3 million inhabitants. The mining stations in the asteroid belts, the research facilities studying alien artifacts. All of them filled with people who trusted Earth to protect them. "How long do we have?" Captain Yoon Seok asked from the back of the human group. 6 standard hours, replied the Chancellor. "Transport vessels will be provided for essential personnel only. Civilian populations," he paused, "are considered acceptable losses for the preservation of galactic civilization." The phrase hit the humans like a physical blow. Acceptable losses. 3 million years of galactic peace had been built on that principle. When faced with extinction-level threats, save what you can and abandon the rest. Ambassador Park stepped forward, his diplomatic training fighting against his human instincts. "Perhaps we could mount a defense." By time for full evacuation, a sound that might have been laughter came from several alien delegates. The Chancellor's optical sensors focused on the human ambassador with what seemed like pity. "Defense against the Devourers, Ambassador. Your species joined our Confederation only 3 years ago. You do not understand the nature of this threat. The Devourers have consumed 47 entire civilizations. No military force has ever successfully engaged them and survived." Commander O'Day, the human intelligence officer, activated his datapad discreetly. The information he had been gathering over the past months suddenly made terrible sense. The Confederation's history was filled with strategic withdrawals and managed losses. They had survived for millennia, not by fighting threats, but by sacrificing whoever was unlucky enough to be in the way. "What if we refused to comply?" Juno asked quietly. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the translation devices seemed to pause. The Chancellor's form grew brighter, a sign that might indicate surprise or anger. "Refusal to comply with Confederation protocols results in immediate expulsion from our alliance." The Chancellor said slowly, "Your species would face the Devourers alone, without Confederation, technology, resources, or protection. It would mean the extinction of humanity." Captain Lee Hanna felt a chill run down her spine. Cut off from galactic civilization, humanity would be completely isolated. No access to the trade networks that fed Earth's colonies. No advanced alien technologies that had revolutionized human medicine and engineering. No protection from the countless threats that lurked in deep space. But as she looked around at her fellow officers, she saw something that surprised her. Instead of fear, she saw anger. These were people who had grown up hearing stories of human history, of soldiers who held impossible positions, of civilians who refused to abandon their homes, of a species that had somehow survived ice ages. "In world wars, through sheer stubborn determination, the vote will be recorded in 1 hour," announced the Chancellor. "We expect full human compliance with Protocol 7. As the assembly dispersed, the human delegation gathered in a secured conference room aboard their ship. The holographic displays here showed a different picture, real-time communications from the human colonies under threat. The voices coming through the speakers told a story that contradicted everything the Confederation believed about acceptable losses. Miners were welding armor plating to cargo ships. Agricultural workers were converting farming equipment into weapons. Civilian transport captains were volunteering for suicide missions to evacuate children from the most vulnerable outposts. "They know," whispered Ambassador Park, listening to the desperate but determined voices. "They know we're supposed to abandon them, and they're preparing to fight anyway." Admiral Juno stared at the communication feeds, watching as people refuse to accept their fate. The Confederation had ruled the galaxy for 3 million years by choosing survival over sacrifice. But they had never encountered a species like humanity, one that chose to fight even when logic said they should run. The choice before them was simple and terrible: the safety of Confederation membership, or standing with their people in what appeared to be certain death. The emergency meeting room deep beneath Earth's capital buzzed with tension as screens displayed incoming reports from across human space. President Choi Hanna sat at the head of the long table, her face pale but determined as she watched the data streams flowing in from the outer colonies. Defense Minister Park Woo leaned forward, pointing at one of the displays. The Confederation is already moving to cut our communication lines. Any order to resist will be seen as an act of war against their authority. An act of war, repeated General Lee Tae, his weathered hands clasped tightly on the table. The old soldier had fought in the colony wars before humanity joined the Confederation. They make it sound like protecting our own people is somehow criminal. Admiral Kim Juno had returned from the Confederation meeting just hours ago, his report still echoing in everyone's minds. The alien alliance expected complete human surrender within 6 hours. Already, Confederation ships were moving into position around human territory, ready to enforce their isolation if humanity chose defiance. Show them the transmissions, Juno said quietly to his aide. Lieutenant Jung Min activated the main display, filling the room with voices from across human space. The sounds were heartbreaking and inspiring at the same time, people facing certain death but refusing to give up. "This is Mining Station, Alpha 7, crackled one transmission. "We've got 15,000 people here, including 800 children. We're not running. If those machines want our home, they'll have to take it from our cold hands." Another voice, younger and scared but still determined. "Transport ship New Busan to Earth Command. We're loaded with refugees from the agricultural worlds, but we're staying in system. Someone has to cover the evacuation ships." A third transmission came from Dr. Bainari at the Deep Space Research Station. "We're scanning the devourers with every instrument we have. There has to be a weakness. Every biological system has one. We just need more time to find it." President Choi closed her eyes, listening to the voices of her people. When she opened them again, her decision was already forming. "Admiral Juno, what would we need to mount an effective defense?" The Admiral was ready with his answer. "Every ship we can spare, every resource we can mobilize. We'd need to coordinate with the colonies, share our newest military technology," and he paused, choosing his words carefully. "We'd need to use tactics the Confederation considers barbaric." "What kind of tactics?" "Ramming attacks, nuclear weapons in close proximity to civilian areas, using artificial intelligence systems beyond their safety limits, everything they've banned as uncivilized warfare." General Lee snorted. "Our people are already doing those things. The mining colonies have been strapping fusion reactors to cargo ships. The farming worlds are sharing soil data to build better armor. They're improvising," observed Science Minister OU. "Without central command, without official support, they're finding solutions we never taught them in military academies." Foreign Minister Namkyu shifted uncomfortably. "Madam President, we need to consider the consequences. Defying the Confederation means complete isolation. No trade agreements, no technology sharing, no protection from other galactic threats. We'll be completely alone." President Choi stood up slowly, walking to the large window that looked out over the city. Millions of people lived their daily lives below, unaware that their government was deciding the fate of their entire species. "The Confederation believes in acceptable losses," she said softly. "We believe in acceptable risks." She turned back to face the room. "Admiral, prepare our fleets for immediate deployment to the Outer Rim territories." The foreign minister's face went white. "Madam President, this means expulsion from the Confederation, complete isolation from galactic civilization." "Then we'll stand alone," Choi replied firmly, "but we'll stand together." As the orders went out through human space, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Naval academies reported so many volunteers that they ran out of application forms. Civilian shipyards began working around the clock, converting passenger ships into makeshift warships. Scientists started sharing weapon designs that violated dozens of Confederation treaties. Most remarkably, word began spreading to other species within the Confederation. Young alien officers quietly transmitted tactical data to human forces. Merchant captains from friendly species accidentally left supply caches in human territory. The rigid hierarchy that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years was showing its first cracks. On the bridge of her destroyer, Captain Park Mina received new orders directly from Earth Command. Her ship would coordinate with local defense forces and prepare for something no human military had ever attempted, a direct battle against the Devourers. "Orders confirmed, Earth Command," she transmitted back. "We'll show them what happens when you back humanity into a corner." Across human space, similar scenes played out. ship captains reading their final orders, knowing they were about to attempt the impossible. Scientists working frantically to find weaknesses in an enemy that had destroyed 47 civilizations. Ordinary civilians preparing to fight machines that could consume entire worlds. The countdown had begun. In less than 6 hours, humanity would either find a way to survive alone, or become the 48th civilization consumed by but they would face that fate standing up, fighting for every person and every world they called home. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you told humanity to abandon their own people. The Confederation blockade formed a perfect circle around human space, cutting off every communication channel and supply route that had connected humanity to the galaxy. Admiral Kim Juno stood on the bridge of his flagship Seoul, watching the alien warships take their positions just beyond human territory. "They're not just cutting us off," observed Commander Ohana, studying the tactical display. "They're getting ready to contain whatever's left after the Devourers finish with us." "Let them watch," Juno replied calmly. "They're about to see something they've never witnessed before." Across human space, something unprecedented was happening. Instead of the panic and collapse the Confederation expected, isolation had triggered a response that defied every prediction about human behavior. The entire species was uniting in a way that amazed even their own leaders. On the agricultural world, new Busan Administrator Kimara was coordinating with mining stations to turn farming equipment into weapons. Combined harvesters were being fitted with railguns. Irrigation systems were modified to spray molten metal at attacking enemies. "The Confederation taught us that war should be clean and fought at a distance," she reported over the defense network. They never saw farmers fight for their land. In the asteroid mining belt, Foreman Yuntae had transformed his entire operation into a massive weapons factory. Rock crushers became shell manufacturers. Solar collectors were focused into cutting beams powerful enough to slice through metal. "We spend our lives digging through solid rock," Tae transmitted to the human fleet. "These Devourer machines are just bigger rocks that need breaking." But the most important work was happening at the Deep Space Research Station, Sejong. Dr. Bae Nari and her team of scientists had been studying the Devourers since the first attacks, looking for the weaknesses that the Confederation claimed didn't exist. "They're not pure machines," she announced over the secure communication channel. "They're biological constructs mixed with mechanical parts. They consume matter to fuel their reproduction cycles. And like any living system, they must have weak points. Her research data spread through human space faster than any official military order. The Devourers needed to feed constantly to maintain their energy levels. During their feeding process, they became vulnerable for exactly 3 seconds to specific types of electromagnetic interference. "The window is tiny," Dr. Neri explained to the fleet commanders, "but if you can hit them with a focused electromagnetic pulse during their feeding cycle, their biomechanical systems will collapse completely." It was exactly the kind of tactical opportunity that the Confederation's defensive doctrine would never discover. Their ships always fought at maximum safe distance, never getting close enough to study enemy behavior patterns. Captain Park Mina, now commanding a hastily assembled defense fleet, studied the data with grim satisfaction. 3 seconds at point-blank range. "We can work with that." The first real test came at mining station Prometheus 7. Captain Lee Hyo had promised his people they wouldn't abandon their home, and he kept that promise. When the Devourer swarm arrived, 40,000 humans watched from underground shelters as their improvised defenses engaged the enemy. The battle was complete chaos. Devourer machines, each as large as a battleship, moved through space like living creatures, consuming asteroids and debris as they advanced toward the station. The defenders opened fire with everything they had: mining lasers, improvised missiles, cargo ships loaded with explosives. Most of their attacks bounced harmlessly off the alien hulls. The Devourers seemed invincible, just as the Confederation had always claimed. But when Transport Captain Han Yun rammed his fusion-powered cargo ship directly into a feeding Devourer and triggered an electromagnetic pulse, something amazing happened. The massive alien construct simply stopped working. Its biomechanical systems, overloaded during the vulnerable feeding phase, went completely dark. It drifted in space like a dead whale. "Target destroyed." Lee Hyo's voice crackled across the communication network. "Confirmed kill on a Devourer." The news spread through human space in minutes. The impossible had happened. A Devourer had been killed in direct combat. For the first time in galactic history, the ancient machines had been defeated. From their observation positions outside human territory, Confederation ships monitored the battle in complete silence. Their instruments recorded everything, but their crews could barely believe what they were seeing. In 3 million years of galactic civilization, no species had ever successfully destroyed a Devourer in direct combat. Admiral Juno received the battle report aboard the Seoul and immediately began coordinating defenses for the next target system. Humanity now knew their enemy could be killed. The question was whether they could kill enough of them to survive. "All ships," he broadcast to every human vessel in space, "we have found their weakness. Prepare for close-range engagement. Today we show the galaxy that there's no such thing as acceptable losses when you're fighting for your home. The message was heard not just by human crews, but by young officers throughout the Confederation fleet. For the first time in their lives, they were seeing someone fight back against a threat their civilization had always accepted as unstoppable. The battle lines were drawn. Humanity stood alone against the darkness, armed with desperate courage and a 3-second window of opportunity. Against all logic and galactic wisdom, they were going to fight. The Devourers had consumed 47 civilizations that chose to retreat. They were about to meet the first species that chose to attack. The Battle of New Sol would be remembered as the day everything changed in galactic history. Captain Park Mina stood on the bridge of her destroyer, Inchin, coordinating a fleet that looked nothing like any military force the galaxy had ever seen. Cargo ships bristled with welded-on weapons. Science vessels had been converted into electronic warfare platforms. Even luxury passenger liners carried fusion bombs in their cargo holds. Devourer swarm detected at system edge, reported Lieutenant Jung Yuna from her sensor station. Contact count is massive, Captain. We're looking at over 200 enemy machines. Mina studied the tactical display, showing red dots advancing toward their star system like a plague of locusts. The enemy force could consume their entire solar system in just a few hours. But humanity had learned from the Battle of Prometheus 7, and they had prepared something the galaxy had never seen before. All ships, implement Operation Last Stand. Mina ordered into her communicator. It was a battle plan that would have horrified any Confederation military commander. Instead of fighting at safe distances, like civilized species, the human fleet would charge directly into the Devourer swarm, using their own ships as guided weapons to create the electromagnetic pulses needed to exploit the enemy's weakness. Dr. Bainari, now aboard the command ship after her research breakthrough, had discovered something even more important about Devourer biology. They coordinate through bioelectric fields connecting each machine to the others. She explained to the fleet commanders over the communication system. If we can disrupt enough of them at the same time, we might cause a chain reaction failure throughout their entire swarm. The plan was completely insane. It required perfect timing, absolute coordination, and the willingness to sacrifice ships and crews for 3-second windows of opportunity that might not even work. As the Devourers approached, consuming space, debris and small asteroids to fuel their advance, Mina gave the order that changed galactic warfare forever. All ships, attack speed. Today we teach the universe that humanity doesn't know how to retreat. The human fleet accelerated toward the alien swarm like an arrow shot from a bow. Confederation observers watching from beyond the system boundary recorded what happened next. With instruments that could barely process the chaos unfolding before them, fighter squadrons led by Commander Ko Minru dove between the massive Devourer constructs, their small ships dancing through biomechanical tentacles that could crush battleships like tin cans. Their job was to identify feeding cycles and mark targets for the main attack waves. Feeding pattern confirmed on target groups 7 through 12. Minru reported over the radio. Electromagnetic pulse window opening in 15 seconds. Transport. Captain Songhee, commanding a converted cargo hauler packed with explosives and electromagnetic pulse generators, aimed his ship directly at the designated target cluster. This is for everyone you've consumed over the centuries, he transmitted. As his ship impacted and triggered its payload, the effect was immediate and devastating. 6 Devourer constructs went completely dark, their biomechanical systems overloaded during their vulnerable feeding state. They drifted in space like dead metal whales. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out dozens of times. Human crews making impossible attack runs, timing their strikes to exploit 3-second windows, trading their lives for dead alien machines. Each successful attack inspired the next crew to try even more daring tactics. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Nara's theory about chain reaction failure proved correct. As more and more Devourers died, the bioelectric coordination field that linked to Swarm began to collapse like a house of cards. They're losing formation, reported the sensor officer from his station. The remaining Devourers are reverting to individual behavior patterns. What had been a coordinated swarm of unstoppable machines became a collection of separate entities, each vulnerable to focused attack. The human fleet, trained in the individual thinking that the Confederation considered undisciplined, adapted instantly to the changing battle conditions. Admiral Kim Juno, monitoring the battle from his flagship Seoul, watched in amazement as his scattered fleet commanders began creating new tactics in real time. Captain Ansel used her science vessel's particle beam to push damaged Devourers into asteroid fields where they couldn't maneuver. Commander Lim Jong-soo coordinated mining ships to trap alien constructs in carefully planned ambushes. The battle raged for 6 hours that felt like 6 years. Human ships were destroyed by the dozens, but for every ship lost, multiple Devourers died. The mathematics of warfare that had favored the aliens for millions of years suddenly shifted. When the fighting finally ended, the human fleet had accomplished something that defied every law of galactic warfare. They had completely destroyed an entire devourer swarm. Not a single alien machine remained functional. The silence that followed was profound. Across human space, colonies that had prepared for extinction instead found themselves celebrating victory. The communication networks filled with voices of disbelief, joy, and grim satisfaction at proving the impossible was possible. But the most important observers were the Confederation ships positioned safely beyond the system boundary. For the first time in 3 million years, they had witnessed the complete destruction of a devourer force by direct military action. "This changes everything," transmitted one young alien officer before his commander could silence him. It did, indeed, change everything. Word of humanity's victory spread through Confederation space like wildfire. Species that had accepted defensive withdrawal for millions of years began asking uncomfortable questions about acceptable losses and strategic retreat. The impossible had become reality. Humanity had not just survived their abandonment by the Confederation, they had discovered how to win against the galaxy's most feared enemy. 3 months after the Battle of New Sol, the galaxy was a completely different place. The Confederation Council Chamber, once a symbol of ordered hierarchy and ancient wisdom, now buzzed with chaotic debate as species after species demanded answers about their military doctrine that had failed so spectacularly. Admiral Kim Juno stood before the same assembly that had ordered humanity's abandonment just months earlier, but his position had changed dramatically. He was no longer a desperate representative begging for protection. He was here to offer alliance as an equal. "The devourer threat has been completely eliminated," he reported to the stunned assembly of alien delegates. 17 swarms destroyed. Across 12 different star systems, the remaining machines have retreated to dark space beyond our sensor range. Chancellor Morthok's crystalline form seemed dimmer than before, his light refracting less brilliantly through the chamber. "How is this possible? Our computer projections showed complete human extinction within 2 standard months." "Your projections were based on your military doctrine," Juno replied calmly. "We chose a different approach to warfare." The data displays around the chamber showed the new reality that none of the elder species wanted to accept. Human forces, now reinforced by volunteers from species throughout the Confederation, had systematically hunted down every devourer swarm they could find. The key had been humanity's willingness to accept tactical risks that other civilizations considered completely suicidal. Dr. Bainari, now promoted to Director of Xenobiological Research for the entire galaxy, presented her findings to the assembly. "The devourers aren't invincible killing machines. They're apex predators who had never encountered prey willing to fight back effectively. Their entire biological design assumes that their targets will retreat when attacked." Admiral Park Mina, recently promoted after her heroic actions at New Sol, added the military perspective that was revolutionizing galactic warfare. Confederation doctrine prioritized ship preservation over mission completion. "When we started treating our vessels as expendable weapons systems, we gained access to tactical options that you had never even considered." The murmur of voices through the chamber showed the impact of her words. Species that had survived for millions of years by avoiding all unnecessary risks were suddenly confronting the possibility that their extreme caution had actually made them more vulnerable to threats. But the most significant change wasn't visible in the battle reports or casualty statistics. It was in the young officers from dozens of different species who had volunteered to serve alongside human forces. Commander Ko Minru, now leading an integrated squadron of mixed species, represented a new generation that had learned from humanity's example. "They taught us that acceptable losses is a choice, not an unchangeable fact," she reported to her own species delegation. "When you refuse to accept defeat as inevitable, you discover options that didn't exist before." The political implications were staggering and far-reaching. Species that had accepted Confederation authority without question for millions of years were now challenging every defensive protocol in their military handbooks. Young officers throughout the galaxy were requesting transfers to human-led units. Colonial governors were demanding the right to defend their territories rather than simply evacuate when threatened. Chancellor Morthok attempted to restore the traditional order that had kept the galaxy stable for so long. The Confederation has maintained galactic peace for 3 million years through proven methods that work. This aggressive approach threatens the stability we have achieved through careful planning. President Choi, Anna, attending her first Confederation assembly as an equal rather than a supplicant, stood to respond. Her presence represented humanity's completely changed status. No longer desperate applicants for membership, but partners offering something valuable to the galactic community. "Peace built on abandoning the vulnerable isn't real peace," she said quietly but firmly. "It's managed cowardice disguised as wisdom. We're offering you something better, the knowledge that threats can be defeated rather than simply endured until they go away." The vote, when it finally came, was closer than anyone had expected. The old guard of elder species supported maintaining their traditional doctrine of strategic withdrawal, But younger civilizations, inspired by humanity's example and tired of living in fear, voted overwhelmingly for a new approach to galactic defense. The Confederation would survive, but it would be fundamentally transformed. Strategic withdrawal remained an option in their military planning, but no longer the only option available. Species that chose to fight would receive full support rather than complete abandonment. Admiral Juno found himself appointed to head the newly created Tactical Innovation Division, a military force specifically designed to develop aggressive responses to threats the old Confederation had considered completely unstoppable. As the assembly concluded its historic session, he stood with his fellow human officers, looking out at the stars through the chamber's transparent walls. Somewhere in the darkness of space, other threats were undoubtedly waiting, but the galaxy was no longer defenseless against them. "Think they'll remember this lesson when the next crisis comes?" asked Admiral Mina. "Some will learn and adapt," Juno replied thoughtfully. "Others will need constant reminding. But the next time someone demands that we stand down and abandon our people, they'll know exactly what to expect from humanity." Captain Kim Dae, now commanding the new integrated response fleet, smiled grimly. "We stand up instead. Always." The phrase had become humanity's unofficial motto, spreading through the younger generation of galactic civilization like wildfire. When faced with impossible odds, when told that resistance was futile, when ordered to abandon everything they valued most, they stood up instead of backing down. It was a simple concept that had changed everything. The galaxy would never be the same again.